You people always waste time. The words hit like a slap across the face. In the middle of a crowded Dallas bank lobby, Evan Richards, branch manager of Linden Bank, throws the accusation at a well-dressed black man standing patiently near the reception desk. The room falls silent. Eyes shift. Conversations die mid-sentence. Julian Carter doesn't flinch. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't reach for his phone. Not yet. Instead, he bends slowly to pick up his leather portfolio, the one Richards just knocked from his hands. Embossed business cards scatter across the marble floor. Financial projections. Contracts. Stock acquisition reports. Richards watches with thinly veiled contempt, arms crossed. If you really had an appointment, sir, you'd have proof. And a reason to be here. Julian stands. His charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection. Crisp white shirt. No flashy watch, no overcompensating designer flex, just presence. Quiet, commanding presence. He opens his mouth to respond. But before he gets a word out, Richards motions to the security guard by the door. Keep an eye on this one, he says loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. Could be trouble. The guard steps forward. Sir, I need to verify your identity. Julian exhales through his nose, slow and measured. The years of executive boardrooms, business acquisitions, late-night equity negotiations, none of it has prepared him for this moment. Because nothing ever does. Not when it happens again. And again. He reaches calmly into his wallet and hands over his license. Richards barely glances at it. Anyone can get a fake ID these days, he mutters. Julian blinks. Once. No emotion. But his grip tightens just slightly. Then he reaches for his phone and types one sentence. Activate phase 1. No warning. No delay. Because what Evan Richards doesn't know is this. The man he just humiliated isn't just a customer. He's Julian Carter, the founder and CEO of a $12 billion tech and equity firm. And he wasn't here for a loan. He was here to buy their future. Julian takes a seat. The lobby is buzzing again. Whispers, glances, the occasional smirk from a passing teller. He doesn't return the stares. He's been here before. Not this exact building, not this exact humiliation, but the moment? It's all too familiar. A lifetime of being sized up in seconds. Of being followed in stores. Of having people glance down at his hands to see if he's wearing a Rolex, as if that's how they decide whether you belong. This time, he had no flashy watch. On purpose. He wanted to see if the system had changed, or if it would still default to suspicion when faced with someone who didn't fit the mold. It answered his question immediately. Across the room, a young white couple walks in. No appointment. No ID shown. And yet Richards personally greets them, leads them past the line, straight to his office with a warm, rehearsed smile. 10 minutes later, a man in his early 30s, khakis, slick haircut, walks in tapping his smartwatch. I'm in a rush. Without hesitation, a teller appears, escorts him to the front. No questions. No verification. Julian watches. He shifts slightly in his seat. Not from discomfort, but from recognition. This isn't about being ignored. It's about being filtered, prejudged in real time, by a social algorithm running silently in someone else's head. And the code hasn't changed since his first high school debate team loss, when the judge admitted later, you were too aggressive. Too intense. Meanwhile, his white opponent had yelled, interrupted, pointed fingers, praised for being passionate. Now, it plays out again. Different setting. Same script. Julian approaches the front desk a second time, polite, composed. Just checking in again. I have a 10 a.m. with your corporate investment team. My name is Julian Carter. The receptionist, clearly uncomfortable, looks toward Richards, who cuts in without even glancing at Julian. Sir, we've told you, take a seat. We'll call you when we're ready. No eye contact. Just dismissal. Julian sits back down, his posture still perfect. Inside, though, he feels the sting. Not the kind that comes from anger. No, this is deeper. It's the kind that whispers. You can build empires, and still be mistaken for the help. He glances down at his hands. Steady. Controlled, trained, but the damage is already done. And Evan Richards has no idea. He hasn't just insulted a man. He's insulted the future owner of his entire institution. Julian checks his watch. It's 10:12 a.m. now. 12 minutes past the appointment he confirmed 3 separate times over the past week. His assistant, Nia, even received email acknowledgement from the corporate investment office just yesterday. They were expecting him. They even requested preliminary documents. He didn't bring a team. Didn't make a grand entrance. He came alone. Deliberately. Because sometimes, the quietest approach speaks loudest when the truth eventually echoes. He's been silent long enough. A text buzzes softly on his phone. It's from Cassandra Hale, CEO of Linden Bank. Julian, just checking in. We're all set upstairs. Let us know when you arrive at the reception desk so we can greet you personally. He doesn't reply. Not yet. Another message pops up. This time from Robert Fields, head of corporate investments. Looking forward to discussing the Dallas Digital Division expansion. Your insights from Paragon Capital could be game-changing. Still, Julian doesn't respond. Instead, he watches as another client walks in, an elderly white man in boots and a faded Texas Rangers cap. Richards greets him by name. First name basis. Offers him coffee. No ID requested. Julian leans back in his chair, the polished leather creaking ever so slightly. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He had almost canceled the meeting after reviewing Linden's lending data. Something felt off. Approval rates in communities of color were suspiciously lower. Minor loan amounts. Longer wait times. But Cassandra had assured him, that's all changing. Julian wanted to believe her. Cassandra was different. Smart. Transparent. Progressive. But the front line? That was another story. Julian's first company, CoreSpark Tech, was built in a 900-square-foot studio apartment in Atlanta. No funding. No connections. Just relentless hustle. He sold it for $3.1 billion 8 years later. His venture fund, Carter Edge Equity, now manages over $12 billion in capital. Most of it funneled into fintech, medical tech, and banking reform initiatives. He didn't come here to make money. He came here to see if Linden Bank could be part of the solution. Or just another symptom. Because before he writes a single check, Julian wants to know exactly what he's dealing with. Not just in the boardroom, but where everyday people walk in needing real service. He wants to see what Cassandra can't. What the cameras miss. And so far, the truth is screaming. But no one at the desk is listening. At 10:47 a.m., Julian stands. 3 separate calls from upstairs. 4 texts. 1 email. All unanswered. He's given this place nearly an hour. More than enough time for dignity to hold its line. Now it's time to draw a different one. He walks toward the front desk once more, calm as ever. Evan Richards is halfway through a joke with another staff member, laughing like he owns the air. When he sees Julian approaching, his smile fades, replaced by that same patronizing smirk from earlier. You again. Richards mutters under his breath. Sir, I'm going to ask you one last time. Unless you're here for a teller transaction, you need to wait your turn. Julian doesn't flinch. He reaches into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulls out a sleek black leather wallet. From it, he extracts a card, thick, embossed, no gimmicks. Just a name. Julian D. Carter, CEO. Carter Edge Equity. Richards barely looks at it. Anybody can print up a business card. That proves nothing, he says flatly. Julian sets the card down, followed by his Texas-issued driver's license, and finally, a corporate ID badge from Linden's own headquarters, issued for high-security access to the executive floors. Richards picks up the license, glances at it for a second, then tosses it back across the counter. Fake IDs have come a long way these days, he mutters. Then, louder, this is your final warning. Either you sit down quietly, or we'll have to escort you out. Julian breathes in, once. Deep. Anchored. He types quickly on his phone and hits send. 1 message. Activate Phase 2. Begin asset movement. Prepare full disclosure strategy. He looks Richards dead in the eye. Tell me something, Julian says, voice even. What exactly does a real customer look like to you? Before Richards can answer, the front doors swing open. Cassandra Hale steps into the lobby, heels clicking against marble, flanked by 2 assistants. She spots Julian instantly. Her eyes widen with recognition, then horror. Julian, she gasps, rushing forward. We've been waiting for you upstairs. Why haven't you? She stops mid-sentence as she sees the tension, sees the security guard inching closer, sees the documents scattered on the counter, sees Richards frozen behind the desk. Julian steps back. I was here, on time, at 9:55. But apparently, I didn't look the part. The room goes still. Not silent, still. The kind of still that precedes an earthquake. 14 floors above, the mood is completely different. In the sleek, glass-walled conference room of Linden Bank's corporate headquarters, bottled water sits untouched. Fresh fruit, perfectly arranged. A large digital screen displays, 10 a.m., strategic growth session with Carter Edge Equity. A high-stakes meeting. A $1.5 billion investment meeting. But the guest of honor never showed. Cassandra Hale stares at the elevator doors like they've betrayed her. She's checked her watch so many times, she's no longer looking at the time. She's looking for an answer. Her phone buzzes again. Still no response from Julian. She turns to Robert Fields, head of investments. Any luck? Robert shakes his head, confused. He confirmed. His assistant confirmed. They even sent final portfolio docs this morning. He was supposed to be here 45 minutes ago. An intern enters the room quietly. We've called the reception desk downstairs. They said no one matching Mr. Carter's description checked in. Cassandra's brows furrow. That makes no sense. Unless, Robert offers carefully, he went to the wrong building? Cassandra shoots him a look. Julian Carter doesn't make those kinds of mistakes. And we're not just talking about any investor here. We're talking about a man whose equity firm has reshaped entire sectors. If he's missing this meeting, something's wrong. She pulls out her phone again and types a final message. Julian, please let me know if there's been an emergency. We're worried. The team is still here and ready when you are. No reply. Downstairs, she knows exactly what Julian walked into, though she doesn't know it yet. The carefully written values framed on every floor of Linden Bank, equity, transparency, inclusion, now feel like hollow slogans. She spent years building a modern financial institution that welcomes innovation, diverse leadership, and community trust. But all of that work is now hanging in the balance. Because upstairs, she was preparing to talk numbers. Downstairs, someone else decided Julian didn't belong. And if Cassandra doesn't act quickly, this won't just be a missed opportunity. It'll be a public failure. A cultural one. The kind that echoes through boardrooms, headlines, and the communities they claim to serve. Julian sits back down. Not because he was asked to. Not because he's giving up. But because in that moment, after Cassandra's stunned face, after Evan Richards' silence, after the stunned hush of the entire lobby, he knows exactly what this is. He's seen it before. In boardrooms. In classrooms. In the airport lounge when someone assumes he's in the wrong seat. The humiliation doesn't come with slurs anymore. Not always. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a policy, a shrug, a long wait, a tone of voice. That tone. Julian stares straight ahead, his posture regal, his jaw locked, his breath shallow. He's screaming inside. But his face doesn't move. He watches the second hand on the large lobby clock tick past 11 a.m. 2 hours now since he arrived. Since he was greeted by a man who saw his skin before he saw his name. To everyone else in the room, Julian Carter is composed, stoic. But behind his eyes, memories churn. He remembers being 19, college sophomore, walking into a local credit union to open his first business account. The manager smiled, then slid the application back to him. You should really consider starting smaller, they said. You're more likely to be approved for a personal checking account. He remembers being 28, pitching his second startup. The investors nodded politely, until he stepped into the room. Then they checked their watches and asked if he was the assistant. He remembers it all. Every slight. Every accidental oversight. Every sentence that started with, "Don't take this the wrong way, but..." And now, in this bank lobby, in 2025, it's still happening. The difference. This time, Julian owns the power. Not just financial power, but narrative power. Weaknesses, receipts, and a truth that the world is no longer willing to ignore. A few feet away, Evan whispers urgently into a phone, his body language uneasy. He's starting to realize something's wrong. But he doesn't yet understand how wrong. Julian closes his eyes for a beat. When he opens them again, he's steady, composed. But make no mistake, his silence is not surrender. It's strategy. And the reckoning has already begun. It happens in 3 seconds. The elevator doors slide open with a crisp chime, and Cassandra Hale steps into the lobby like a storm in heels. Her eyes scan the room with laser focus, and then she sees him. Julian. Seated. Still. Calm. But surrounded by tension so thick it could be cut with a letter opener. Her heels echo against the marble as she strides toward him. Julian, my God, we've been waiting upstairs for nearly 2 hours, she says, her voice a mix of concern and confusion. Why didn't anyone tell us you were here? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Julian doesn't speak at first. He simply stands, brushes invisible dust from his jacket, and faces her. His expression is unreadable. But his silence speaks volumes. Cassandra turns to the front desk. Why wasn't he brought up immediately? No one answers. Evan Richards, pale and sweating, clears his throat. We didn't realize who he was. Cassandra blinks slowly, her voice tight. You didn't recognize the man whose face is on the investor briefing you've been seeing for a week? Evan opens his mouth, then closes it. Julian's voice cuts through the silence like glass. Calm. Controlled. I arrived early. Provided ID. Explained my appointment. I was told to sit. And wait. And wait. He turns his gaze on Richards. And then I was accused of faking my credentials. Of trying to skip the line. Of being a problem. Cassandra looks horrified. Julian, I'm so sorry. This is unacceptable. We'll go upstairs now, and… No, Julian says firmly, his voice steady. That meeting. It's over. But… Julian raises a hand, gently. This isn't about a meeting. This is about a moment. And you don't get this kind of moment back. The lobby is silent again. Except now, the silence is loaded, with guilt, with discomfort, with consequence. Julian turns toward the exit. Richards stammers behind him. Sir, I didn't know. Julian pauses at the glass doors. Turns back. You didn't care to know. Then he leaves. Not angrily. Not loudly. Just deliberately. And the message is clear. The man they dismissed is now the one writing the rules. 3 weeks pass. And during that time, Linden Bank has no idea that the man they dismissed has been quietly buying them, piece by piece. Through a network of 6 holding companies, Carter Edge Equity now controls 21% of the bank's outstanding shares. Just below the SEC's disclosure threshold, but well above what any one person has ever owned in Linden's history. Julian didn't come back for revenge. He came back for clarity. For leverage. Seal Wiseum. In his private office overlooking the Dallas skyline, Julian reviews his legal team's final analysis. A stack of documents sits to his left. Corporate structure charts, board voting procedures, shareholder bylaws. To his right, a thick red folder labeled Phase 3, Internal Reformation Strategy. Across the room, Jillian Rhodes, his general counsel, leans forward. We've positioned you perfectly, she says. If you push another 4% through secondary acquisition next quarter, you'll have controlling interest. Julian nods. But that's not the goal, he says. Not full control. Just enough to sit at the table and force them to look me in the eye when the truth comes out. He glances toward the window, where the reflection of the city dances against the glass. We don't burn down systems. We restructure them. Later that evening, Julian holds a private dinner meeting with the heads of his equity coalition. Financiers, civil rights attorneys, ethics consultants. Each brought in for one purpose, to make Linden better than it's ever been, whether they want it or not. He raises a glass of sparkling water. We don't make change through outrage alone, he says. We make it with facts. With power. And with a strategy no one can ignore. They toast. The next day, a formal letter is hand-delivered to Linden Bank's board of directors. A request, not a demand, for Julian Carter to address the board at the upcoming quarterly meeting, in his capacity as a principal shareholder. Inside the envelope, a single line typed in clean, bold font. I came to invest in your future. Now, I own enough to change it. At Lyndon's headquarters, the board scrambles. What does he want? Asks one director. What's he planning? Asks another. They don't know yet. But they're about to find out. The deeper they dig, the worse it gets. Julian's independent audit team, led by compliance expert Monica Liu, has been working quietly behind the scenes, interviewing staff, reviewing internal memos, running blind mystery shopper tests across multiple branches of Linden Bank. What they uncover isn't just disturbing, it's systemic. 34 verified complaints of racial bias over the past 5 years. Not a single one escalated to corporate HR. Not one resulted in formal disciplinary action. Most were buried under layers of bureaucracy, resolved with vague apologies and reassigned roles. But worse than that was the pattern. Black and brown clients consistently waited longer for service. Their documents were scrutinized more aggressively. Loan applications with identical credit scores saw different outcomes, depending solely on the applicant's last name and zip code. And in Dallas alone, the numbers painted a clear picture of 2 banks operating under one roof. One for those who looked like regular customers, and another for everyone else. Julian stares at the data, each page heavier than the last. This wasn't a one-off, he says quietly. It wasn't just Evan Richards. The audit also uncovers emails, internal messages between managers using coded language like risk profile, unconventional appearance, and additional verification in reference to minority clients. A whistleblower comes forward. Isabel Vega, a junior associate at the Arlington branch. She speaks with hesitation but firm resolve. He'd tell us things like, watch the ones who look like they're hustling. Dia, ask for extra ID if they're not from around here. It was never written in policy, but everyone understood what he meant. She hands Julian a flash drive. Inside are recorded team meetings, screenshots, and even altered customer logs. In one, a client was marked as belligerent after asking why 3 white customers were served before him. Julian leans back, absorbing it all. The numbers, the language, the silence. It's not about fixing one man, he says to Monica. It's about exposing a culture and holding it accountable. She nods. We've got more than enough. Julian turns to Jillian, his general counsel. Then we go public, with discretion. They'll hear it from me first. At the board meeting, the truth is out. And this time, it's fully documented. At exactly 9 a.m., the doors to Linden Bank's executive boardroom swing open. A dozen directors sit in stiff leather chairs around the gleaming walnut table, their faces tight with speculation. Folders. Coffee. Silence. CEO Cassandra Hale stands at the head, arms folded, jaw clenched. No one speaks, because no one knows what to expect. Until now. Julian Carter enters the room. Not as a visitor. Not as a guest. But as a shareholder. The air shifts. He's not wearing the quiet gray suit this time. Today, it's midnight blue. A subtle gold pin on his lapel. Carter Edge Equity. No introductions are necessary. Most of the room has already seen his face on the cover of Forbes. But no one was ready for this. Julian walks with purpose, flanked by 2 attorneys and a policy consultant. He takes a seat across from Cassandra, sets a thick report binder on the table, and opens it without a word. Cassandra's voice cracks first. Mr. Carter, we weren't aware you'd acquired this level of stake in the bank. Julian doesn't flinch. That's the point. You weren't aware of a lot of things. He opens the binder. This is a compiled audit, independent, factual, and damning. 34 instances of bias. Dozens of internal emails. Audio recordings. First-hand testimony. A culture of dismissal. A pattern of discrimination. He slides copies across the table. One by one. Some directors glance at the pages. Others avoid eye contact entirely. We're here today, Julian continues, not because of one bad employee. Not because of one incident in your lobby. But because your culture has protected and rewarded that behavior for years. A board member raises a hand weakly. What do you want, Mr. Carter? Julian levels his gaze. I want change. Real, enforceable, irreversible change. He outlines a list of demands. An external, third-party audit of all branches. A complete overhaul of anti-bias training. A community oversight board with enforcement power. A transparency in loan approvals and service metrics. And lastly, Julian adds, I want Evan Richards removed. Immediately. Not for punishment, but because leadership begins with accountability. Silence. Then Cassandra speaks. We need to discuss this further. Perhaps a task force, or No committees, Julian says calmly. No studies. No delays. He closes the binder. You built a system that looked the other way. I'm here to make sure it never does again. By 10:27 a.m., the vote is complete. Unanimous. 12 out of 12 board members raise their hands, not because they all agree with Julian Carter, but because they know they have no choice. The data speaks louder than denial. The headlines are already writing themselves. And the only way forward is through the fire Julian just lit. Cassandra Hale breathes out slowly, her hands folded in front of her. The board hereby accepts the terms outlined in Mr. Carter's reform initiative, she says formally. Effective immediately. Julian doesn't smile. He nods once, measured, respectful, and utterly in control. The changes are sweeping. That afternoon, an internal memo hits every branch inbox. Mandatory anti-bias training will begin within 30 days. Loan applications will undergo blind review processes. A new division, Community Accountability and Equity, will report directly to the board. A third-party compliance firm has been hired to audit all branches. Word spreads fast. Financial news outlets erupt. CNBC, Bloomberg, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, all lead with a version of the same headline. Billionaire shareholder forces massive reforms at Linden Bank after racial incident. But it's not just news. It's impact. Within 72 hours, 3 other mid-sized banks issue statements announcing their own internal reviews and equity audits. The industry feels the tremor. Julian's press team holds off, strategically. No interviews. No victory laps. Just one statement, issued to every outlet. This isn't about revenge. It's about responsibility. And every institution, especially those handling people's futures, has a duty to see all of their customers as fully human. Inside Linden Bank, ripple effects begin immediately. Customers begin sharing their stories online. Positive ones. I walked in and was offered help before I even sat down, one post reads. Didn't feel like I had to prove I belonged. Internally, staff whisper about the culture shift. Meetings now begin with real conversations, not checklists. Managers start listening more than lecturing. Meanwhile, Evan Richards' desk sits empty. Cassandra announces his formal termination 2 days later, citing gross misconduct and violation of the institution's core values. Julian doesn't attend the announcement. He's already moved on. Because for him, this was never just about Linden Bank. It was about what could happen when someone with power finally says, enough. 1 year later, the bank looks nothing like it did. Gone are the glass walls that separated customers from staff. Gone are the rigid counters and the cold, impersonal greetings. In their place, round desks. Soft lighting. Community photos framed along the walls. A space that feels more like a shared resource than a fortress. Julian walks through the front doors of the newly renamed Linden Community Trust. No security guard watches him out of the corner of their eye. No manager sizes him up before saying hello. Instead, Diana Ellis, the new branch director, a black woman in her early 40s with a sharp mind and warm presence, greets him with a firm handshake. Mr. Carter, welcome back. Julian smiles. Genuine. It's good to be here. They walk the floor together. Customers chat easily with staff. Lenders take extra time to explain every document. A teenager in a hoodie is learning how to open his first checking account. Still some resistance at first, Diana admits. Old habits don't break overnight. But numbers don't lie. Customer satisfaction is up 42%. Minority loan approvals have increased without raising default risk. Julian nods. Success is persuasive. Later that afternoon, he meets with a group of young entrepreneurs in the community room, a space that didn't even exist before the reform. They're all under 30. All from neighborhoods the bank once overlooked. Each one pitching real ideas, with real business plans. Julian listens, smiles, takes notes. Then he pauses, looks around the table. I see a little of myself in each of you, he says. And I want you to understand something. The system may still have flaws, but it's evolving, and part of that evolution is you. One young woman raises her hand. How did you keep your cool that day, when they treated you like nothing? Julian exhales, slowly, looks her right in the eye. Because I knew exactly who I was. And more importantly, I knew what I was capable of. He stands, gathering his notes. You'll be underestimated, doubted, dismissed. But never forget, you have the power not just to succeed, but to shift the system itself. The room is quiet. Not from silence, but from realization. Change isn't just possible. It's already happening.